What up, friends? So glad you decided to join me today because we are going to look at the key elements of the perfect web page. And the reason we're going to do this is because every few years the requirements, our on-page requirements, change a little bit because the way people use the internet is constantly changing. And I look around the internet today, I look at a lot of your pages, and I see a lot of the same old tired elements that were there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that kind of thing. And a lot of these things we no longer need. And then oftentimes when I look at these pages, we don't have a lot of the elements we need to capture the greatest footprint in modern times with the way the internet works today. So I will walk you through the key elements you need on all of your pages moving forward. We'll look at what each one does and what its effects are. And I'm going to give you some bonus tips at the end to really spice up your pages so you can make the best pages anywhere. All right, let's dive in. The first three elements we're going to look at are actually invisible. As we look at this web page here, you don't see these elements because they exist in something known as the document head. The document head is invisible, but it's full of data that machines like search engines or other software programs, something like that, can use to identify your pages. So for example, if you look at a search result, this is known as a title tag. This is known as a meta description. These items are pulled from your document head. And another example would be something like this open graph output that you might see in a social media feed. That is also something that lives in your document head and that will not appear like this unless you have this in your document head. So this is stuff you need to have on your new pages. And let's dive in now and take a look at each one, okay? So the first one I mentioned is a title tag. This is something that appears in the, like I said, in the document head. It's buried in your HTML in there, and this is specifically used by search engines to represent the links that appear on your pages. Your title tag is also used by another add-on that we're going to look at in just a bit called Open Graph Tags. Generally speaking, your Open Graph Tags will pull in the title that you specify for your pages. A word about titles. Titles should be about 70 characters in length, or no more than 70 characters in length, because that's all Google will display here in these results and pretty much any search engine. So you want to keep those to about 70 characters or less, and you want them to be as specific and, not keyword rich. You don't want to stuff a bunch of keywords in there and have it be a bunch of crap. It needs to read like a real, like a real title. It needs to be appealing to both humans and machines, but in this case, you want your actual HTML titles to err on the side of mentioning a keyword rather than being like psychologically persuasive for humans. You kind of want it to be for machines, okay? And then, so that's item number one. Item number two in your document head is a meta description. And just like the title, it's used to represent your site in a blurb like this, a search engine result. And it may also be used by Open Graph Tags to enhance your Open Graph output. And so now, so we got a title tag and a meta description. These are carryovers from practices we were employing 10, 12 years ago. We still need these two items today. The next item, though, might be a new one for you. And this is actually a super powerful item and possibly one of the most important things you can add to your pages in modern times, and that is known as Open Graph Tags. And here's the whole section of those on this page. Now, as you look at this, you don't need to add this kind of code to your website. Not at all. You're not going to be doing any kind of technical stuff like this. Instead, you're going to use a plugin. Or I sell a box in my Focus ecosystem called the Open Graph Box. You can add that to your WordPress website, and then you'll have the ability to tweak this stuff, but really it's all automatically generated for you. And so we will look at the results of these Open Graph Tags here. It produces something known as a card, an Open Graph card, in social media feeds, in like Slack, the chat client Slack, also in Skype, in Medium, posts that are on Medium that include a reference to an Open Graph card will appear like this. So this output convention is used by platforms all over the internet. It's recognized and used, and it's used to enhance links to your website. So for example, when I compose this tweet, I just put a link to this page in the tweet, but Twitter looks at this and says, okay, we've got all the necessary information here to create an open graph card. Let's go ahead and do that. So what I had to do to create this, the title tag was automatically pulled from my post. The meta description, same deal. All I had to do was create a unique image for my open graph output on this page. And I uploaded that to my my page here. I specified it. So here's my page. All I did was go over here and specify an open graph image under this thesis open graph thing, which is the box that I sell. If you use my stuff, this is what you get on your post composition screen in WordPress. And so I just specified the image here. When I save my page, then any links to my page will be enhanced with this open graph card output on any media that supports it. Okay. So my process with every time I make a page, I'm making sure I've got a title, making sure I've got a meta description, and then making sure that my open graph information is fully I've input everything I need, which generally just means having an image. So I now have a process that I make an open graph image every time I do a new post. And another little tip for your open graph images, this is a great branding opportunity. So I've reinforced my branding here with the URL. Open graph card output also reinforces your URL here, which is handy. So I've got a lot of branding reinforcement baked in. So if you want to have your links appear with this massive enhancement in social media feeds, you will need to add open graph tags to your pages as well. And just a note on this, we know on every single platform that supports, like that has a feed, like a social media feed, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we know that individual posts that include images get way more traction, way more attention than ones that do not. And open graph cards bump that up even more. When we see this, we think associatively about really high authority websites that also have links that look like this on social media feeds, such as links to the New York Times, any other authoritative media outlet. Their stuff's going to look like this, and your stuff's going to look like this too if you use open graph tags. So, somebody scrolling through their social media feed is going to encounter this and think, this is official, this is authoritative, this is something I might want to click on. So open graph tags, very, very important these days. Make sure you add them to every page you create. Okay, so we have covered the invisible items. Now we're going to look at the on-page stuff that we actually see, the stuff we interface with, the real obvious stuff. So bear with me here. Some of this stuff's going to be, pretty elementary, but all these elements are crucially important, and I'll throw in some extra tips for you as well as we go through them. Okay, so we've got our title tag, meta description, open graph tags. Those are our first three. Now we're moving to on-page stuff. Number 4, the headline on your page. Now the headline's super important. You want to write this to appeal to humans, and you want to be as persuasive as possible. And by that I mean you want to get people engaged in your content. So you want that headline to drive eyeballs down the page and get people engaged. Now, there used to be a mantra about how to compose your title or your headlines, and it was sort of a rule from old advertising and copywriting, basically 7 words or less, 8 words or less, something like this. Keep it short, keep it punchy, try to make it as persuasive and as appealing as possible, that type of thing. But that maybe worked 10, 12 years ago. I certainly followed that convention forever. But things have changed over the last few years, and some copywriter friends of mine and people who run large email lists have shared information with me that I think is pretty profound. Basically, in their testing, those medium-length headlines of about 7 to 8 words, those don't really work as well anymore as really short headlines or much, much longer headlines. So let's take a look at that real quick. Here's an example of a short headline. Aimless browsing versus browsing with intent. This doesn't doesn't make a promise. It doesn't give you any the only curiosity that this headline arouses here is a sense that there's a fight or like a match between aimless browsing and browsing with intent. If that doesn't spark your curiosity enough, you're not going to click through or read this. And really, how would you even know what to expect from such a title? So anyway, I bring this up to suggest that it's really hard to come up with a short title that is meaningful and going to, arouse curiosity and get you clicks. It's hard to do. If you can do it, if you can compose a very short headline that is sticky and attractive absolutely do that. I'm going to, assert that that's pretty hard to do these days, and you'd be better off using longer headlines, something that is extremely descriptive, something that makes a clear promise, something that sets up a very clear information gap for your visitors, like, did you know if you do this, then you get this, something like that, something where you can fill in the blanks for people, get them engaged, and move them down the page. So, for example, some of the data that I'm citing here comes from people with email lists, and they'll send out different subject lines, short subject lines, medium, and long ones. And people are finding more and more that longer subject lines that make specific promises or address specific situations, like offer solutions to specific pain points, these are starting to get much more traction. And so I'm going to advise you to err on the side of specificity. And if you want to think about this, you might imagine that, 15 years ago, we were all sort of new at this thing, but now we're way down the long tail of the information curve. And the long tail is nothing but specifics. It's all very detailed items, getting really, down to the nitty-gritty here. I think that's probably why these detailed subject lines are more effective these days, and you want to treat your headlines the same way because the psychological mechanism there is the same. You want people to read this, get curious about what you have to offer, what you have to say, and then dive into your content. So, headlines, number 4. Number 5, very important element, not used widely enough in my opinion, or not used strategically enough, and that is subheadlines. Subheadlines are extremely critical for any page of any length. Like if the page is more than a couple paragraphs, you need a subheadline to break up the visual monotony of like a huge wall of text. And also each of these is like a little reset, a mental reset for your visitors, for your readers. Each time you hit a new section, you've got the subheadline, you're re-engaging, and you're ready to go back through this section. So it's like a little reset button each time. So make sure you add some subheadlines to your posts, break them up into sections with these things, and also make sure that if you scroll the page and read your headline and subheadlines, that you have a good idea what's going on with the page. That is good for people who are scanning your content, who are not necessarily committed to engaging with the whole thing. You might, if your subheadlines are good, you might get people re-engaged at the right section. This might help you with a call to action, might help you, get an opt-in, a lead, a sale, something like that. So make sure you use your subheadlines effectively. They enhance scannability, like I said. They make your whole page stickier. So headlines and subheadlines, those are our first two visible elements. Now we move to the next two, which are super important, and that is media. And really there's 3 types of media, but we're only going to address 2 here. You've got audio, video, and images. We're going to talk about images and videos because these are the most likely elements you're going to have on any page you create from now into the future. So we'll start with images. I don't have an image on this page because there really was no image that was going to make this page any better. It wasn't going to make the page easier to understand. It wasn't going to really enhance anything. So I did not add one here. However, if I did add an image, I would want to make sure I do 2 things to every single image I add. I want to optimize it. That means it needs to be sized pretty close to whatever output scenario I have. So if my site is 1200 pixels wide, I don't really want the image to be too much wider than that. The reason why is that reduces the file size to the maximum degree possible. We want to use the smallest file sizes we can while still covering our output basis, if you will. So we want to make sure that our images are optimized and also compressed. When we compress them, that makes the file size as small as possible for use on your site. It's absolutely essential that you do both of these things with every image you ever add to your website. And that's going to keep your pages as fast as possible. But really, I'm advising you to do this because images are the fastest way and easiest way to completely screw up the performance of your web pages. For example, if you were to take an image off of your iPhone, just upload it to your website directly and put it on your page, it's going to add like 2.3 megabytes or more to the weight of that page. You shouldn't have a single page on your website that is 2.3 megabytes in size. In fact, most of my pages are under 300 kilobytes, so 2.3 megabytes is massive comparatively. You can imagine if you have 3 or 4 of these pictures, your page is going to be so fat and so slow, no one's going to want to use it, okay? So if you include images, be sure to optimize and compress them before uploading them to your website. Okay, the next one, videos. Videos, I don't need to tell you how popular videos are now. Videos are kind of the way like most kids are interfacing with the internet these days. This is how we get news now. This is how we learn. Like videos are a big deal. And if you have videos on your pages, these are really sticky, attention-grabbing elements for your readers, for your visitors. Now, it's similar with images. Videos are really bad for performance if you embed them directly on your web pages. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to just drop a YouTube URL in your post, hit publish, and then have it show up. It will show up on your site. It won't look perfect, but it'll be there. But it's going to add 500 kilobytes or more to your page load times. It's going to add like a second and a half or more to your page load times. So that stinks. We don't want to be cannibalizing performance in this way. So here's what we do with videos. This is an example of a video that's loaded on demand. All it's loaded initially is a thumbnail image. The user actually has to click on this to say, it's almost a nudge to say, hey, I would like to watch this video. When they click on it, then the video is loaded on demand and they get to watch it. The reason this is important is because we know that only like 18 to 22% of visitors to any page with a video are actually going to watch the video. They're going to elect to watch the video. So if we were to instead load this video up for everybody and not load it up on demand, we would be loading this for 78 to 82% of the visitors on the page, and they'll never use it. So we've just completely been inefficient in the way we've loaded this resource. We've hung this extra loading time on everybody. In reality, we're only going to have 20% of our visitors using this element. So we want to make sure that we are doing the best we can for performance. We don't want to load this thing up for everybody. We want to load it up for the people who say, hey, I'd like to watch this. I do that with an add-on for the Focus WordPress theme called the YouTube box. All you got to do is, you drop your YouTube ID in there for the video, and it will show up like this and do that on-demand thing that I just showed you a bit ago. Now, the Focus WordPress theme also has a little bit of an enhancement here. It's called an expand. It expands the video outside the boundaries of the content column to make it really big. And this is just another way to ratchet up the amount of attention this video is going to get on the page. And it becomes a really powerful, really attention-grabbing element here. Like, you cannot miss this as you scroll down the page. It looks important. So with images, we've got to optimize and compress them. And with videos, we absolutely must load them on demand. I use the YouTube box for the Focus WordPress theme to do this really quickly and easily. It's a $17 add-on for Focus. It's just a one-time fee. You just add it to your website, and then you can do this stuff from now and forever. No problem. Okay, so there's our on-page elements. It was headline, subheadline, images, videos, and our last one is going to be captions. We see right down here. So captions are very powerful. With the other elements I mentioned, captions get the most eyeball attention on the page when we do eye tracking studies with your average user. So if you're going to include an image or a video on your pages, I'm going to assert that you also must include a caption. If you don't include a caption, you're just giving up a free opportunity to have the user's attention. So make sure to add a caption to your images or videos, and when you do so, use this space wisely. Use it wisely. Share something important, convey a very important idea, direct people to the next thing you want them to pay attention to, but use this to engage attention and then direct it where you want it to go next. These are powerful elements. These are opportunities. You want to use these opportunities to your advantage. Next, so that's our on-page elements, all 5 of them: headlines, subheadlines, images, videos, and captions. All very important. The best pages are going to have all of these elements, and they're all going to have all those elements done in exactly the right way. But now we're going to move to the style of this page, because there's some important elements of style that you need to include if you want your pages to be as effective as possible. The first thing is to use staccato style paragraphs rather than these long paragraphs you might encounter in a novel or something like that. Now, I've been doing this for a very long time. I've encountered people who have various mentalities about this. So a lot of people who are, come from a book world are used to those paragraphs, one right after another, and just a dense wall of text on books. But the reality is, people on the internet don't like to consume things in that manner because it looks like it requires too much effort. It's too much density of text. It's not inviting. It's just not catering to usability at all. And so then you might ask yourself, well, then why do they do that in books if it doesn't really work with people? The reasons are purely economic in books. You've only got so many pages. You want to stuff as many words on each page as you can so you have fewer pages. Books that don't look like they're real big look easier to consume. You're more likely to buy a shorter book in a library, for example, or in a bookstore than something like War and Peace, which looks like it's going to, require an arm and a leg to read and get through the dang thing. So the conventions we're used to from other types of media probably don't apply to the internet. Instead, on the internet, we want to use these staccato-style paragraphs to establish a conversational tone with our readers. The reason this is so critical is because whenever we interface with a computer, whenever we're on the internet, looking at websites, even when we call customer service and are interfacing with one of these AI chatbots, we want to humanize the machine as quickly as possible. So with the chatbots on the phone, I'm screaming representative into that thing to try and talk to a real human as quickly as possible. I imagine you might have found yourself in this scenario as well. And with internet, we want to be conversational to humanize our pages. We have to acknowledge that for the other person reading, they're interfacing with a machine. Their desire is to humanize this interaction as quickly as possible. Staccato-style paragraphs cater to that mechanism, and they also cater the fractious attention that we experience on the internet. From clicking around on social media, you click here, you click there, you're going back and forth, you go to a website, you bounce off that website, you hop over to a YouTube video, you hop back. We bounce around all over the place now. Our attention is fractured. We need, to capitalize on the attention we do get, we need to cater to what works best for our visitors. Staccato-style paragraphs will help you achieve that. It takes what would be a compressed wall of text, gives it some breathing room, and makes it look more accessible and easier to digest. If you do this, more people will consume more of your content. So staccato-style paragraphs, very, very important. Next convention, I just love this. I've been using this a bunch recently. This is sort of one of the things I've started to integrate into my process flows more and more, and that is the use of contextual bolding to highlight important points and also to keep readers engaged and moving down the page. All right? So if all you did was read my headlines and then my contextual bolding and subheadlines and captions, you would have a really good idea of what's going on with this page and like the main ideas behind my page by the time you reach the bottom. In addition, these are like visual, it's like a game of hopscotch visually. Any visitors who are actually engaged with your content are going to be bouncing down the page off of these elements that stand out visually. Contextual bolding is a beautiful way to do this. It is a beautiful way to keep people engaged and moving down your pages. And then you want to enhance that further with the use of other flair type elements, such as I call this a call out. We can call it a contextual, we'll call it a content highlight perhaps. Like I said, I call them call outs. You can call them whatever you want, but these highlight important ideas. If you're scrolling down the page, you're certainly going to see that, and you're going to scroll back up to it and read what was in this box. So contextual bolding, content highlights like this call out, and then also some contextual flair, such as drop caps, the use of a block of code, a little thing of code here with a highlight inside it. These are, extra flair that I call this attention design. You're adding little elements to your pages that do not distract from your primary message, that actually keep people's attention fixated on your page, on your content, and moving down the page. All this stuff's really easy to add with the Focus WordPress theme. You get drop caps. You can do all this stuff. You can do some other stuff. I'll show you in just a bit. Some more, a little bit more sophisticated attention design elements. This is a basic one. This is a call out. Again, this is in the Focus WordPress theme. Super easy to add. And I pretty much use these in all of my pages now. So we've now covered 9 main elements you need on all your pages. That's really the key elements, okay? I'll run them down real quick again. Invisible elements: title tag, meta description, open graph tags. The open graph tag, really all 3 of those things are for how your pages will be represented out in the wild on other websites, either through the open graph card output, the SERP output like this, or other conventions that may be out there. So title tag, meta description, open graph tags. Next we've got headlines, subheadlines, images, videos, and captions. And then we've got our stylistic elements of staccato style paragraphs, and then the use of flair inside our content, contextual bolding, element highlights, call outs like this, that kind of thing. Now, when you have a page, your page comes to an end. And I've learned some pretty interesting lessons from the ends of pages through the years, and I want to share this one with you in this video. And this was pretty important. When you reach the end of an article, or when a user reaches the end of an article, they want what I call a jumping off point to go somewhere else. Okay? If somebody has been engaged enough to read all the way down to the end of a page, you need to provide them with a place to go next. Ideally, the most relevant and pertinent place to go next that you can possibly provide. It's a jumping off point. Interesting little anecdote here from my past, but I used to have a couple pages on the DIY Themes website that was producing almost all the clicks in my footer. Like on my homepage, my footer only got a couple clicks every few days, something like that, but I had a couple pages where people were constantly clicking on the links in the footer, and I did not understand why. Finally, I figured it out. What they were doing is these couple pages that were producing all this traffic in the footer, all this activity in the footer, they were pages where people were very likely to make it all the way to the bottom. But on those pages, the content just ended right here before the footer. And so people make it all the way there, they're frantically searching for something to do next, so they aimlessly click on various links in my footer navigation because they had no other directed place to go. It's so funny, but that is exactly what people do. You've probably found yourself doing the same thing. When you run out of space, you want somewhere to go next, you don't know what to do. It may be the back button, it might be clicking on something that you're not even sure what you're going to find next, but those are aimless activities. Those don't help us. And so what I'm going to say is you need to provide a clear jumping off point for people if you want them to go, so they go where you want them to go next. That helps your sales, helps your conversions, just helps the affinity visitors are going to have for you. Like, all you do is provide value. You provided all this value in your post. You had all these key elements that they liked that kept them there. And then you provide a carefully curated jumping off point for them. You were doing them favors left and right, fam. So in my case, I included a product pitch here because this post is about a strategy that you can use with Focus WordPress theme. And so, of course, at the end of the post, I just provide a little link here to the Focus WordPress theme so you can explore further. This is completely relevant to the information you just read above, and it gives you a place to go to check out, something that might be of interest to you based on the actions you just took. So this is a powerful element. This is actually called a focus card, this particular display. I built this with the Focus Cards add-on for the Focus WordPress theme to make elements like this. I highly recommend you add these types of elements to your own website. But a word of caution about a jumping off point. A lot of people take a lazy solution here and use something called the Related Posts plugin for WordPress or a similar type of functionality. This might pop out like 2, 3, 4 links after any post or page on your website as suggestions for where users might want to go next. Unfortunately, these things all fail to acknowledge the psychology of users on websites. And that is basically, it's as simple as this. When you give people one option, they're likely to take it. The second you add a second, third, or fourth option to that, you are creating a decision matrix for that user, and that is way too much weight on them, way too much pressure. You are asking them for too much. And so what people do is they don't make any decision at all. When you give them 4 options, they're not going to make any decision at all. They're going to bail. You've asked for too much. If you give them one thing that's related to what happened above, a curated thing that you have given them, they're going to be way more likely to take the action. You've only given them one option. We know from user psychology that people are likely to act in that scenario. They are not likely to act if you give them multiple options, especially if they're not pertinent to whatever the user just went through on your page. Okay, that is critical information right there. Don't screw this up. Do not be giving people a bunch of options. This is new internet. New internet is not like old internet. On new internet, people are on your pages, on your website for specific reasons. There was a promise made to them on the link they clicked on social media. There's an information gap that was established, and they hope to resolve that information gap when they get on your site. There's a product they want. They want to buy that when they get to your site. Something like that. Each page now on your website needs to have a single goal, and every element on that page needs to work toward that goal. If you've got anything else, anything willy-nilly, throwing traffic here, there, or directing people in other places, that stuff is not working for you. That is tanking your conversions. It is making your pages less accessible. It is just hurting all of your metrics. Stop doing stuff that's shooting yourself in the foot. Take this advice and start winning. Okay, last thing. I've got some bonus items that just spice up the elements I showed you a little bit more to show you how you can make them even more fun than what I showed you here. So first, let's go look at my focus sales page. So on this page, I have a bunch of subheadlines. But because this page is so big, it's a huge page, it had to be broken up visually with something besides just a freaking wall of text that goes on and on and on forever. So to do that, I use these elements called full width bleeds to establish like a totally different visual thing for each new idea I introduce on the page. This is great. These are easy to make with the Focus WordPress theme, and it's just a better way to break up your long pages. And it looks great too. I mean, this is sort of what everybody wants to do with their pages to make sales pages, but we use all this complicated software to do it. You don't need that. You don't need a bunch of complicated software to do this. You can use the Focus WordPress theme to create all these elements you want on your sales pages, all the stuff you think is special or that it works for attention design. All that stuff is baked into Focus. You can just deploy it as needed when you want and create pages like this from the comfort of your WordPress admin. So section delineation using these full width bleeds, absolutely critical for your longer sales pages. Next thing, we've got to call this a contextual aside. It's just a little thing. It's almost like a footnote. You ever seen a footnote over here? It'll be like a 1, and then over here on the sidebar, there'll be a 1 like explaining whatever this thing that needed additional explaining was. This is similar. It's a related link to the content in this section, and this is great. This is actually a little sales technique. So I know from experience that there's different types of buyers on my sales pages, right? Some people are really thorough and detailed. They want to read every freaking bit of information. They want to look at every testimonial. They really are heavy information gatherers before making a decision. This is a link to a testimonial. I know that people who are really detailed are going to be looking for this kind of thing, so I throw it out here on the side with my contextual aside, and this is an attention-grabbing element. You're not going to miss this if you're one of these detailed people. By the same token, I know there's also people who are going to come in here and look for one thing that solves the one problem that they have, and they'll buy based on that. This isn't for them. This is for the more detailed people. But when you have a sales page like this, you want to cater to as many different buying styles as possible. Contextual asides are a great way to achieve this. Also a great way to sort of add an explainer for something else that may be in your content in a way that attracts attention. Anyhow, contextual asides, very important. Now I'm going to share a little psychological tip to get people reading more effortlessly on your pages. All right, it's a concept that I'm going to call squeezing. So here's an example of a squeeze. So you can employ this convention at the beginning of any article you write or at the beginning of a section. So like within each little section here, I could have done this. I could have squeezed it with an image. But on this page, I've got this squeeze image here. And what this does, this makes these first couple paragraphs look really easy to consume, especially when you compare it to the width of the regular content area. So because this image squeezes the content, it creates a psychological situation where it looks easy to consume, and visitors will already start reading this before they even think about what they're doing. They'll be a paragraph or two deep in your content before they've even had a chance to think about it. That is a powerful convention, so I recommend you use squeezes to your advantage, but of course be careful. I elected not to use an image on my example post because there was no image that was really going to be super pertinent or make that page any better. But if you do have something like that can be used as a squeeze, this is a powerful little mechanism you can add to your pages to increase engagement. Next, if you're going to include imagery, and that imagery includes a human in it, a person or a depiction of a person, you want the eyes of the person in the image to be looking at like whatever it is you want the visitor to do. So imagine there's a picture of a woman here and she's looking over here to the left. I might want to put a sign-up form or something over here and have her looking directly at the sign-up form. So from eye tracking studies, we know that people follow the gaze, like where an image is looking. So we match eyes, like, oh, what is this person looking at? Okay, and we also look at pointing. So if a person's pointing in the image, same effect as the eyeballs. If you have like pointing or eyeballs in an image, you want to make sure those are pointing at something really important that you want the user to notice, okay? So directed imagery. And the last thing I'm going to recommend for enhancing your pages here, is something you want to add for your elements of the modern web page, is a card output. Like I showed you earlier, like I said, this is Focus Cards. This is really easy to make with the Focus Cards add-on for the Focus WordPress theme. But this is a powerful display convention that we are now seeing all over the internet. Like I said, we see it in Open Graph card output. We see this in other places as well. This display convention is used to turn something into a thing, okay? It looks, if we encounter this type of display, we know that it is describing a specific thing, okay? And in this case, it's Focus. I've got all of my products built out this way. Let's see, I can show you an add-ons page with a bunch of Focus cards. This is a great way to display and introduce a thing or to organize things on your website. So there it is. We covered the main elements that you have to have to make a perfect modern web page. The reason why we need these elements now is to cater to the way attention works now, and also the way things are shared on internet now. Now things are shared on social media, in an email, in a Slack chat, in a Skype client, something like that, and then you click on those links to visit a website, and then that website must deliver on the promise that brought you there in the first place. All these elements I've shown you today are going to help you capture that attention and direct it in ways that will benefit you best. All right? Thanks for watching, fam. I'll see you in the next one.